Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Show Me the Money, straight talk on important financial considerations for college. Glad that you've joined me tonight, and I look forward to hanging out with you tonight for an hour or so, depending on how questions go and all of that. So with no further ado, I'm going to jump into my presentation. I'm going to encourage you to ask questions along the way. I think you all probably see the chat panel up there, so feel free to send me questions. I'll be happy to answer them along the way. Here we go. So here's the agenda for tonight. I'm going to go through how to pick a school that you can afford during and after college, and we're going to spend a little time talking about how to decide how much money to borrow, if any, based on the major that you're looking at. We're going to look a little bit about scholarship searches and how to put together a good, solid application. And finally, I want to give you some tips and hints about how to talk to the financial aid office and what to talk about. Before I do that, I just want to give you a little background about myself. This is me. You can see me in both places right now. I am one of the money coaches here at ASA, or American Student Assistance. And my own background, I have worked in the financial aid office and the admission office. I've also spent time in the development office working with alumni affairs and parent affairs. And I'm also an adjunct faculty member. In my day-to-day job now, I get to work with students as well as college and university faculty and staff just to help you do all of these kinds of things, which is learn about different financial topics. And I think personally, this is a dream come true to be able to help people like you achieve your college dreams. So, who is ASA, American Student Assistance? Well, we're a not-for-profit agency, and we've been in business for well over 50 years. We started in the business working with student loan borrowers, and now we work with students and alumni across the board to help them become more financially savvy. And one of the things that we've done is to create this product called SALT. And really what SALT is a money coach tool to help you become financially savvy. And I'll give you more information about this at the end, but there's a great website that we have. It's saltmoney.org. This is a free website for you to go out and find all sorts of information about different financial topics, including scholarship searches and other great things that you're here for tonight. So let's jump into the presentation, shall we? Let's talk about school choice, first of all. I think this is really important to think about where it is that you think you want to go to school and what questions you should be asking yourself when you think about that. So first and foremost, you may want to consider things like location. Do you love being where you're at and want to live at home and stay in the place that you are? Do you want college to be an adventure and travel across the country or to a particular place? Maybe you really want to go to school where your mom and dad did, or maybe you really don't. It may depend on size. Some of you might really want to go to a big school. Some of you might feel more comfortable in a small private institution. And some of you may even want to simply start off at community college to get your feet wet a little bit, and that's perfectly fine. So thinking about that factor as well. You might also think about major. A lot of schools have a lot of different things to offer, and you might already know what you want your major to be, in which case you really want to make sure that the school you're going to has that particular major, and you might even look at what they're doing in that program. Are there opportunities for you as an undergraduate student to do research with faculty members, or is there someone with a real particular interest on their faculty that you really like? You might ask about that. Are there any other really important things for you as you're looking at a school for you to think about? And I would ask you to really write down a list of all of the things that you think are important in your college experience. So for example, if you really want to live on campus, then you want to make sure that they have campus housing. If you love sports, then maybe you need to go to a school that has a great football program so that you can at least go watch some games, or basketball or soccer or whatever that might be. Maybe it's their music program is fabulous and you're really a musician or a theater person. Just thinking about those really different kinds of things. Once you've thought about all of that, then the world really opens up to you and you can start your college search a little bit easier based on some of those criteria. And then, of course, so that's kind of your school fit and your personal fit. If you have an opportunity to visit the schools that come up top on your list, I'd certainly encourage you to do that. Sometimes the school that looks great to you on paper turns out to feel a little not you when you go visit on campus, or vice versa. Maybe a school that you weren't so hot about all of a sudden feels really great when you get on campus and you could see yourself being there for 2 years or 4 years, depending on the school. The other type of fit and choice that I want you to really think about is financial fit. So part of this is your decision about how much money you want to spend on your college education. So let me say one thing first. The sticker price that you see is probably not the price you're going to pay. So I'll talk a little more about that, but cost has to be a factor. So you should look at what that cost looks like, and then we'll look at what the financial aid packages look like and how to break that down a bit more so you can compare apples to apples. But you may also want to think about other things as it relates to cost. For example, if you start out at a 2-year school, are those credits transferable to a 4-year school? And do they have articulation agreements with some 4-year schools in your area or in your state that would make those credits more easily transferable right away and without a lot of hassle for you? You also might look at job placement rates. How good a job does the career services office at that school do, and how great a job is the academic preparation in landing you a job in the field that you hope to get a job in? And finally, you also want to look at and ask the question of each of the schools you're interested in, what's the average time to degree? So for example, if there's a less expensive school, but on average it takes 6 years to get to the degree, but maybe you could go to a slightly more expensive school and it would only take you 4 years to get that degree, it might actually cost you less in the long run to go to the slightly more expensive school, and it also then would give you 2 more years of earning potential just by making that slight shift. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat panel right now about that, so I'm going to take that as a clue that made some sense. Great. So I mentioned this. It's not just about the sticker price. So when you go through the process of applying to school, obviously there's kind of 2 separate processes, right? There's the application for admission process, which is separate from the financial aid process. So you'll want to make sure that you're doing both of those applications and meeting all of those deadlines. One of the biggest places that we see people miss out on financial aid opportunities or scholarship opportunities is simply because they miss deadlines. So if I can give you one great piece of advice right now, it would be to get a big calendar out with a big red pen and make sure that you circle those really important dates on the calendar, looking at both the federal financial aid forms as well as the institutional financial aid forms. And that way, when you get those financial aid packages in, then you'll be able to take the cost of attendance at each school, subtract the financial aid opportunities that they give you, and really see a bottom line cost out of pocket, what that would mean to you. So some other things to think about, and I've already tossed this out a little bit, but you may really want to consider community college or junior college. When people ask you where you graduate from, it's really just the last school that you went to. So if you went to such and such community college and then transferred to another really great school, you only ever need to say that you graduated from that really great school, and nobody's going to bother you about that. So if that's, kind of that prestige factor is in your mind and you really want that degree from that school, there's nothing wrong with that, but you might consider ways to cut those costs by getting some of those credits out of the way that then would transfer to that other school. And again, certainly consider personal fit. If the school that you end up at is not somewhere you really want to be, and you leave after a semester with a bunch of student loan debt and some bad feelings, then you probably didn't get a whole lot out of that. So make sure that it's somewhere that you can at least feel okay about as you go through that process. And then finally, I would encourage you to consider your long-term goals. So, it may not sound really awesome to stay at home for a couple of years and, get some of those community college credits out of the way. But if that saved you from having to pay an additional $20,000 in student loans, that might be worth that long-term goal. So I mentioned making a list, and SALT has some resources for you, but you can do this for yourself as well. As you're going through your process, I certainly encourage you to really look and compare. And part of that may be listing out school A, B, and C, and really looking at what some of them give you in terms of what's ideal to you. So listing out whether it is the school size or the school location that you're looking for. Do they offer the major that you want? Do they offer the activities? Do they offer the housing? That kind of thing. But then also looking at the financial pieces and what those time to degree look like and things like that. And when you get it down to the last couple, then you can really do a pros and cons worksheet. List out all the great things about each school, list out the things that maybe aren't so great, and have in black and white in front of you what might be the best choice for you. And sometimes that helps take the emotion out of it just a little bit. So I'm going to stop there just for a second and see if there are any questions out there that anybody has before I continue. And I see somebody asking when they should start the process of consideration. And certainly this is going to depend a little bit on you, but if possible, I'd have you start this process before your senior year so that when you get into your senior year of school, you've kind of narrowed down your school choices already, and then you're really just worrying about the application process, the deadlines, making those last phone calls, making sure you have your letters of recommendation and your ACT and SAT scores and all of those things lined up for yourself. And if you have the opportunity over some summer vacation or something like that to do some school visits, it's great to be able to do during some of your earlier high school years as well. I know not everybody has that opportunity, so there are some virtual tour kinds of things that you can do as well, kind of like what you're doing here tonight, and I encourage you to take advantage of those as well. There's often chats that you can do with current students at schools and things like that too to get some additional information and insight from current students. Okay, I don't see any other questions out there right now, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of the borrowing considerations that I think are important. And just one sec while this slide loads up here. And while this is loading, I do see another question that came in here, so I'm going to read this question that says, do you know if a university offers scholarships to transfer students? I've been accepted to a very expensive private school. My scholarships have brought the cost down to $25,000 per year. However, they also have a Connect Bridge program at their local state school, which I would go to for 2 years and then transfer. I'm worried that if I don't go now, it may be full price when I transfer, and he's asking my thoughts. That's a great question, and the truth is that it depends on the school. So the best thing for you to do is to actually contact that school directly and ask them what their policies are about transfer financial aid. Some schools are awesome about it, and they set aside particular parts of their financial aid pool just for transfer students. Other schools, in all honesty, focus their financial aid on their incoming first-year students. So I wish I had a magic answer for you, but the best answer is really to go back to that school and ask them what their policies are. And congratulations to you on the great acceptance and the great scholarship offer too. Okay, so let's talk about some choices here by major and some things to think about. And one of those things is to really think about earnings by major. And part of the reason that I want to talk about this is because I think it should influence a little bit how much you're thinking about borrowing. Because what I really want you to be able to do when you get done at the end of the day is to be able to repay your student loan without a whole lot of stress in your life, right? So here's just a few earnings that I picked out here by different occupation. And you can see here there's a wide range. But if we look overall across all occupations, the average earnings in 2010 were about $44,000. Now, if you were a sales manager, you were making over 100 grand. If you were in computer programming, almost 75. But you can see here, you know, if you're a mental health counselor, you're at 41. If you're an elementary school teacher, about 54. If you're a waiter or a waitress, down around $20,000. Now this is on average, so this includes both people who have just entered the workforce as well as people who have been working for a lot of years in the field. So just keep in mind this is kind of middle of the road. But one of the things to also consider then is, let's see if this will click through. To also look at where you are by location. So depending on where it is you think you want to maybe live after graduation, or maybe where you're living now, you may also want to look by state, and you can even break this down further. If you go out to BLS.gov, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have over 800 different occupations, and they'll let you view that by state. They'll also let you view it by city area, so that you can get a pretty good comparison. And you can see here, if I look at Massachusetts versus Missouri, I just picked two M states for you, and then you can see there's a wide variety between those two. So kind of a vast difference. But one other piece of that puzzle then is to really then look at what the cost of living is. So if you think in your head about, I'm just going to use Boston for example, Boston, Massachusetts, the average yearly wages are $53,700, which is a whole lot more than in Columbia, Missouri, where they're $38,700. But the equivalent cost of living in Columbia versus Boston is only $37,212. So I actually would probably feel like I had a little bit more money in Columbia than I would in Boston, even if my wages are a lot lower. One of the calculators that you can use is out at bankrate.com, and there's a great cost of living calculator out there, so you can play around a little bit with some different locations. And I'm just seeing a couple questions here. I want to make sure that I do notice that some of you are asking about some scholarships and things like that, and I'm going to cover some scholarship area that will do that for you in just a moment. And primarily, I'm going to get to questions at the end. So if I don't answer it right now, it's not that I don't see you. But I'm going to try to keep the questions that I'm answering at this moment to the topic on hand, and then I'll bounce back to any questions that you have at the end. And thank you so much for your questions, because I love them. Okay, so I mentioned earlier when I was talking about those average wages that those are average. So starting salaries can be a lot lower. A couple more resources for you to check out salaries. If you go out to naceweb.org, there's a salary survey out there. And this is a great one because it's a lot of starting salaries generally for the most recent graduating classes. So I really like that. But you can also just get online and do a search, whether you're a Google or a Bing fan, whatever you like your search engine to be, and just type in starting salary and whatever occupation you're interested in. You'll get a lot of good information out there. Salary.com is another site that you can use. But just try to give yourself some information about the career or careers that you might be thinking of, so they have some idea about what that starting salary might be. So there's no absolute perfect best answer for this, but some of you may be thinking, well, how much should I borrow and how much is okay to borrow and all of that kind of great thing. So I'm going to give you a couple of borrowing guidelines. In general, rule of thumb number 1 says that your monthly student loan payment should be no more than 8 to 10% of your monthly take-home pay. And what does that really mean? Well, what that means is if I had average student loan debt, so the graduating class of 2012, their average debt at graduation was $26,600. Under standard student loan repayment, that's a monthly student loan payment of about $300 a month each month for the next 10 years. So not bad. It's kind of like a car payment, and I think you're probably a good investment in yourself. I certainly believe that I was a good investment in my own self when I borrowed money for my own education. But just something to think about. So really what that would mean from an 8 to 10% standpoint is if I got a salary of about $40,000, which if you remember a couple earlier slides, that was about what average salary was in the US. That would equate to a monthly salary of about $3,300 a month. So 8 to 10% of my salary is between $260 and $333 a month, which is right in range with that 8 to 10% of my take-home pay. The other rule of thumb is that your total student loan debt should not exceed your first year salary expectations. So what this is really trying to get across is that if you know that you're going into a higher earning field, for example, maybe you want to be an engineer, or eventually you have the skills and the aptitude and the time to become a doctor, then you might be able to take on a little more debt than those of us who maybe want to go into teaching or some of those other service fields. That said, there are some student loan forgiveness programs specifically for teachers and healthcare workers and other public service programs. So you want to keep that in the back of your mind as well. So let's move on a little bit to scholarships here, because I think this is going to answer a number of questions that I see in the chat panel, and I think this is a really important topic for us to consider. So first of all, the search. Really think about this like a matchmaking service. You are an awesome person, and you have a lot about yourself that you might not even think about, but you have a lot of unique attributes, and really what you're trying to do is to find a scholarship that meets your special attributes. And remember, you don't have to have a 4.0 GPA to get a scholarship. There are scholarships for all sorts of things. So really, this is an opportunity for you to do some different kinds of just searching around a little bit, if you will, to find the one that might work for you. So where do you go? If you are in high school, feel free to reach out to your guidance or your college counselor at your high school. If you have one of those available to you, that's a great place to start. If you don't, or if you're already out of school, please feel free to reach out to the financial aid and admission offices at any of the schools that you're interested in. They will be more than happy to pass along any information that they have. And lots of service organizations, state agencies, potentially even your employer or a parent's employer might also offer different scholarships. So I'd encourage you to look at that. And then you can hop online. And of course, as with anything online, there's a number of resources that are kind of so-so and you might not love them. I will tell you that SALT does have a scholarship search on our site. So you can go to saltmoney.org and you can use our scholarship search, and there are a bunch of articles on the site that will help you with everything from figuring out the search to writing a good scholarship essay and all of that kind of thing. You may also just want to go onto the web and do some searches with key terms. So if you think about yourself, and just a couple examples here that I'm listing, if you're from Minnesota, as an example, then you might want to type in scholarships for Minnesota and see what comes up. If you're an undergraduate student, then maybe you want to look at undergraduate scholarships. If you're a grad student, graduate scholarships. You may even put in something like scholarship 2013, or if you're going to school starting in 2014, do scholarship 2014.pdf. That might seem a little weird, but there are some smaller scholarship organizations that don't necessarily put their scholarships into big search engines, but you might actually find their application by typing in that kind of a combination. You can also try for some of your unique personality traits as well. So whether it's scholarships for women or scholarships for artists or scholarships for athletes, things like that. And if you're just looking for some lists, you can try even scholarship lists, and they will find a number of lists out there for you as well. So once you've found those, what do you do? It's a great question. Make a list. Skip the name. It seems ridiculous, but just because something is named, even scholarships for women, it doesn't mean that you can't necessarily apply for it if you're a guy. You have to really look at the eligibility requirements to make sure that you are not qualified. And read the scholarship and the organization description to make sure that it's something that would match with you. And look at the entire scholarship application. You want to make sure that you know every piece of that application, what they're going to be asking you for, and if you would be able to complete that and to meet those conditions. Then and only then you determine if you qualify. So you're going to start by assuming that you qualify for everything, and you're just looking for the reasons that you won't qualify, if that makes sense. You may then also want to just double check, particularly if it's a smaller scholarship that you found or one that has maybe last year's date and you're wondering if they offer it this year. You can call that scholarship foundation to ensure that they're still offering that scholarship and have funding for this scholarship again this year. And again, I just want to highlight this. Assume that you qualify for the scholarship and look for things that would disqualify for you. I'm going to just tell a really great story that my colleague shared with me, and she mentioned that her girlfriend actually won a scholarship for blonde women, even though she's a brunette, because she wrote a great essay about how it was that she thought she would live life as a blonde and how that would be different. And because nobody else actually wrote a really great essay, they awarded her the scholarship. So there wasn't anything in the application that said you had to be a blonde. It just said that it was, a blonde scholarship. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of a suggestion about what that looks like. And again, you can get scholarships for all sorts of things. So it's not just about GPA. There are benefactors out there that really want to reward a variety of things, and that can be everything from overcoming obstacles to maybe beauty pageant winners, or something great you're doing with community service, something that's related to your career interests or your talents. It could also, again, be something like your parent's employer or related to religion, even race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, all of those kinds of things. There are specific scholarships out there for you. So just a couple of tips about the application itself. It may seem like it goes without saying, but I want to tell you that as someone who worked in a financial aid office and did read scholarship applications, not everybody does this. So my inside little secrets for you seem easy, but you will actually go a long way with this advice. So when you get that application, particularly if it's not one that's just an electronic application online, do make sure that you either type it or you print very neatly. I need to actually be able to read your application. And if possible, if you have other documents, they're requiring an essay or some other particular piece that they want you to turn in, you should also be able to type those or, again, neatly print those. Do talk about yourself. This is your opportunity to shine, so don't hesitate to be the unique person that you are. I'm a person, and I'm going to read your application. you're a person, I want to be able to connect with you and really sense who you are. So moms and dads, if you're on the phone right now as well or listening to me, I really encourage you to actually have your student write this essay because it comes clear to us who is actually being a genuine person and who's had somebody write that for them. So talk about yourself and be you. Now here's the thing, I just said be unique, but avoid all the colored crazy fonts and things that might be distracting. Just let it, again, focus on you. And really that presentation is everything. So when you're putting everything together in that package, make sure that it's all lined up nicely, that everything's in order, and that I have a really nice package in front of me. One of the key things to pay attention to is whether you have a postmark versus a deadline. So if it says that the deadline is December 1st, then you need to make sure whether or not you can actually mail it on December 1st or whether it needs to be in their hands on December 1st, and make sure that you get that in on time. And unless you're told otherwise, go ahead and use those big 9 by 12 envelopes and nothing's folded in half or anything else. And it's generally okay to also attach a curriculum vitae or a resume with your application as well to give a little more information about yourself if that would make sense and be a benefit to your application. So about the letter of recommendation, a lot of scholarships and a lot of admission applications as well are going to ask you for letters of recommendation. This is another one of those where you really want to do some homework and make sure you ask the right questions and the right person. There's nothing worse than actually asking for a letter of recommendation from someone who's going to write you a terrible letter of recommendation. Again, that may seem silly, but I've seen letters come in that truly were not awesome. So ask the right person. Ask someone that you've had a good experience with. That can be a teacher. It can be somebody that you're working with in terms of community service. Maybe it's church leadership. It might be an employer. Kind of depends on what you're going for, what the scholarship is all about. And sometimes they'll have criteria about who you can actually use for your letters of recommendation. But think about that right person. And then give them plenty of time to actually write a letter of recommendation. A good letter of recommendation can't be written in 15 minutes, and you really need this to be your best shot. I would certainly ask that you consider asking 2 or 3 people, even if you only need one letter of recommendation. That way, if something comes up, you'll always ensure that you have one of those letters of recommendation ready to go. And most people, if they write you one letter of recommendation, they'll be happy to write you a letter of recommendation for multiple different scholarships or for multiple applications of admission. Once they've kind of gotten that shell for you, they'll be able to personalize that for those other opportunities. Some of the things you might consider giving the person that is writing you that letter of recommendation would be your curriculum vitae or your resume. Any information about the particular scholarship, or if it's for admission, information about the school that you're wanting to attend. And then if they let you, you can certainly ask them to read the letter. Some of the scholarships and some of the admission applications won't let you. They require it to be a sealed letter of recommendation, but you can certainly ask about that if you want. And again, have that backup, have that second person that can provide that letter for you. If it's not an electronic letter of recommendation, I would encourage you to ask that person who's writing you the letter of recommendation to use their letterhead. It's a little more personal, a little more special, and that carries a little bit of weight with that application as well. And finally, do remember to say thank you to the people who write you letters of recommendation. You never know when you're going to need to ask them for another letter of recommendation. If you choose to transfer schools down the line, or if you want to continue to apply for scholarships throughout your college career, which I would absolutely recommend, A lot of people just think about it when they're first going to school, but you should really think about it your entire collegiate career, both undergraduate and graduate, because there are opportunities for you all along the way. And as you start looking into those scholarships, you will see that there are different opportunities as you go through. Just a little bit of behind the scenes stuff for you. So about the judges and the organizations that provide those scholarships to you. Again, those judges are real people, and so they really want to know about you and they want to hear a story. They're quite possibly judging you on a rubric. So what that means is they're going to have some columns of information. They're going to be checking off certain details, and they're going to be scoring you based on particular things. So they may be reading 200 different applications, and they're going to be looking at that rubric for that. They want to feel connected to you, and they want to feel like you understand and that you feel like the part of that organization. So this is where the personalization comes in. You want to really read about the organization that's providing you the funding and make sure that the story that you're telling is something that would be a story that the organization could use for marketing purposes as well. And that may seem a little bit commercial, but at the end of the day, again, it's this scholarship matchmaking kind of thing, and they want to feel like you're a good match with them and vice versa. And so that's where the great story comes in, and that's where you have the opportunity to really connect with them and show them that you did your homework, and that you are the right person for them to select to give that money to. Someone asked a question here about, does SALT have information that can help me? And absolutely. Again, I encourage you to go out to saltmoney.org, and SALT can absolutely provide some help, whether it's our scholarship tool. We do have some videos out there. We've got some articles. We've got some infographics. So feel free to get out there and use what information is helpful to you. We're more than happy to provide that to you, and look forward to hearing your winning success stories for those essays as well. I'm going to take just a second here to have a drink of water. And I just want to give you a few tips before I get into the Q&A about talking with the financial aid office. So hopefully all of you are awesome people, and you know how to have a great conversation. And that's partly why you're on this call today, because you are awesome people getting information to help yourselves on your journey, which is amazing. So here's the thing. Call the financial aid office. I would call the financial aid office at any school that you're looking at. You can absolutely have gone online in advance and done some homework, and you'll find a lot of answers on the different financial aid websites of all the colleges and universities across the country. They're required by law to give you a lot of the information on their website, but it's okay if you're not truly comfortable, or if you want to just double check. Call them and make sure that you for sure know their process. So for example, a lot of institutions have just one application for you for the financial aid process. Again, there's two processes. There's the admission application and the financial aid application. Those are two separate things usually. So even within the financial aid process, oftentimes there's just one application, but sometimes there are multiple applications even for their financial aid. So ask them whether it's just one, or if there are multiple, or if they have special scholarship applications that you need to apply separately for. Most schools will just have that run through the financial aid office, but some schools will actually have a few separate scholarship applications that run through the different academic departments. So if you know that you're going to be a business major, then you want to go to the College of Business and ask them, hey, do you have any scholarships for the business department? The same thing if you want to go into engineering or teaching, or you want to be a lawyer, or whatever that may be, go to that particular office, that academic office, and ask them if they have scholarship opportunities, particularly for their students. Again, deadlines. Make sure you know the deadlines. If you learn nothing else tonight, it's that deadlines truly are important, and if you miss them, in most cases, you're out of luck, at least for this year. So make sure that you get those deadlines and you know what they are. Back to the person who asked about the transfer question, great question. You know, are there different scholarships for new students versus returning students or transfer students? Definitely ask that question and make sure that you know it depending on the situation that you're in. And then another thing to ask about is, are these scholarships guaranteed? So not just will I get this my first year, but will I get it my second year, my third year, my fourth year? And are there any qualifications that I need to meet in order to keep it? So do I have to maintain a certain GPA? Do I have to take a certain number of credits? Do I have to be in a certain major? Just make sure that you understand the criteria for renewal down the line so that you don't miss out on that money down the road. The other thing that is perfectly okay to talk to a financial aid office about is any special circumstances. So most of you probably know, particularly if you're a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, that you're going to have to file the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And you'll need to do that each and every year that you're in school. But it doesn't let you put in any special information about yourself. It's pretty much tax information and some asset information, and that's it. So if you have special circumstances, like maybe you lost a job this last year, or you're anticipating that your wages are going to be cut in the year ahead, maybe you've had significant healthcare expenses, or maybe you have younger siblings that are in a private K through 12 school. Those are all things that a financial aid office may be able to take into consideration with your overall financial aid award. So call them. There will be some extra paperwork for you to do, but in some cases it can be absolutely worth your time and effort to go through that process. So back to the personalization and what you should do. When you talk to the financial aid office, when it's possible, the student, you, the student, should be the active participant and not your mom or dad. And the reason for that is you are the person from a legal standpoint that they're able to talk to. There are some privacy rules and regulations in place, and you can provide a waiver for folks to be able to talk to your parents about your particular situation. But in general, it's great if you as the student can be that active participant. You are the one who's going to be primarily financially responsible for that choice in many cases. And we want to make sure that you understand what that process is and that you take this process seriously and that you take your education seriously. When we can see in the aid office that you are really dedicated, you will score a lot of brownie points with folks in the office. One thing to be aware of is this is not a negotiation. So you don't want to go in and try to play hardball and just be mean and demanding about that. It generally won't get you anywhere. But it is absolutely okay to sincerely ask if there are any other options available to help you attend their institution, particularly if it's somewhere that you really want to go. And the answer might be no, but the answer is always no if you never ask. So I'd certainly encourage you just to have that conversation, and you never know. And sometimes as it gets closer to school, there are some scholarships that will go unclaimed. And if you've been, one of those people who's called in and asked about it, then that might be you that gets that at the end of the day. So let's talk about making the choice. I know that was a lot of information. So I'm just going to do a little wrap up here. And again, then I'm going to go ahead and get to all of your questions here. And again, I super appreciate seeing all of the questions in here. Thanks for being so active with me today on this session. So think about your roadmap. I don't know where all of you are at right now. I'm guessing from some of the questions that I see out here, we've got some people who are in high school, but we've also got some people who are transferring. So you're currently in undergrad, and I see at least one person who's also looking like they're going to graduate this year and heading on to grad school. So you're in lots of different places. So it's important for you to consider your own roadmap. So think about where you want to go and what you want to do, and really ask yourself some of those questions about what's important to you, both in the short term as well as the long term. And it may mean that there's some hard choices for you to make. But I think that if you can weigh those decisions now, you're going to be a whole lot happier with your life overall when you get down there. So thinking about, where you want to go and what you want to do, thinking about how much debt you're comfortable taking on and what makes sense given your career field. And then really at the end of the day, doing that apples to apples comparison so you can get to that bottom line financial decision to feel really comfortable with the decision that you make. And when you get down to that bottom line, double check yourself as well. And should you revisit any of the decisions that you've made along the way? And in the meantime, between now and when you choose what school you want to go to next, even think about what you're doing today. I know I'm guilty of this myself. I love to stop and get a cup of coffee, and I feel great about getting a latte because it has protein and carbs and all that good stuff. But at $4 a cup, it's probably not my best habit to have every day. So if I could take that money and instead use it on books next year, I'd probably be a lot farther ahead. So I'm going to kick my latte habit. I don't know what habit you might have, but I would encourage you to think about those spending patterns so that you too can reduce your debt load in the future and have that be meaningful for you. And again, just remember to have those conversations with yourself. Really put it down in black and white. Try to take some of the emotion out of your decision making. It's really tough when it's your future. I totally get that. And finances in particular tend to wrap a lot of us up. So if we can take at least a little bit of that emotion out of the picture, it generally makes that decision at the end of the day a little bit easier on us, and you'll go forward feeling great. Someone asked out there if I could go ahead and share the SALT website again. Absolutely, here you go. It's saltmoney.org. And again, you'll find our website out there with lots of useful tools. We also have a blog which has great entries each and every day. You'll also see a lot of those blog posts show up on our Facebook page. So if you are a Facebook user, please feel free to like us. And if you are a Twitter fan, please feel free to go ahead and follow us out there too. And we don't mind a retweet or two either if you'd like to go ahead and share. Happy to have you do that. For those of you who are mobile phone users, we also have an app called Fix. It is a free mobile download, so feel free, regardless of whether you're an Apple user or a Droid user, you can get that app out there. And it's one of those little tools that will help you to figure out how much you're spending on those little things and maybe even help you kick a habit and save a little bit of money too. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for being with me today, and I'm going to start answering questions in the chat panel here. And I also have a question out here. Let me just start here. And someone asked about, do you have to fill out the FAFSA? That's, do I have to fill out the FAFSA every year, even if my circumstances haven't changed? It's a great question, and the answer is yes. If you would like financial aid each year, you have to fill out the FAFSA again, even if your circumstances haven't changed. That's what makes you eligible for any of the federal or state grant opportunities, as well as work study, student loans, and in some institutions that also helps you become eligible for their institutional aid, and they will require that. So as much of a burden as it may be, yes, you want to fill out your FAFSA, and make sure to do that at fafsa.ed.gov. That's the free FAFSA filing website, as opposed to the other websites that may be out there that actually cost money. Just a reminder for those of you who are here, I will try to get through all of your questions, but if I don't get through all of your questions, there will actually be a live chat at the end of the presentation. I'll be logging in there as well as another colleague of mine from SALT. So if I don't get to your question on air here, please do join me in the live chat at the end of this, and I'll be happy to answer your question there. I'm going to scroll through some of these other questions here as well. And I'm going back up to the top, so I apologize. It's going to take me just a moment here to get into here. So here's a question that says, what if you are in need of financial aid, but the state you live in says that your family makes too much money and will not give you the money you need? How do you go about getting the money you need for college, even if you have applied for scholarships but have not gotten any scholarships you have applied for and done? That's a really hard question. And what I would encourage you to do is to potentially broaden your school search, first of all. So remember that it's not just about the initial sticker price that you see. And I'm going to use myself as an example. And I did go to school a number of years ago, and the landscape has changed some. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, it was cheaper, it was less expensive for me to go to a small private school than it would have been for me to go to my state institution. And the reason for that is that a number of private schools have more what they call institutional scholarships, or scholarships that the school itself can give you, than the state schools do. So you might go that route and just think about your school search a little bit differently. And I would also encourage you to think about those other options, like potentially doing a year or two at community college so that you can bring those costs of the first couple of years down. And then if you need to go to a more expensive school for those last 2 years or 3 years, that at least you've brought those costs down for a little while. Hopefully that helps a little bit there. Get into another question here. So this question says, do you have more chances to get into universities when you transfer from community college? That's a really tricky question, and a little bit of it depends on the state where you live and what you're trying to do. So some states have agreements with four-year schools that if you take a particular program with particular credits, that they will automatically give you admission into that four-year state school. Other states only allow a certain number of applications each year, and that's it. And then they don't allow you to do that. They won't take any more applications after that. So check with the state that you're at, check with the community college that you're interested in, ask them about their transfer policies and about their relationships with the other schools that they have in their articulation agreements. Thanks for that question. So this is a general question that says just what are the best ways to earn scholarships, and I think we covered a lot of those. Really, it's about doing your homework and actually sitting down and writing those applications. I think many of you will probably be surprised that you will find some scholarship applications that apply to you, but most people don't apply. There are actually scholarships in this country that go unawarded each and every year simply because nobody, and I mean 0 people, applied for that scholarship. So it doesn't hurt to do a little homework, to do a little digging around, and again, to put some effort into that application and make sure that you get those out again on time so that you give yourself the best way for consideration. And if you're a freshman or a sophomore or even a junior, this is actually a great time for you to start looking for those scholarships to see what you might be eligible for and to start a list for when you're going to be a senior, so that when those deadlines come around, you're prepared, you're ready, you've already done your homework, you've already done your research, you know what they're going to ask you to do. You might just need to know what their new topic for their new essay question is. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of questions in here, so I'm just trying to get through this. So this one says, hi, I'm an English major from Senegal and graduating next year. Congratulations. And you're considering law school in the U.S. Are there some scholarships available in the U.S.? This is one of those cases. Law school is a little bit special. It doesn't have as many financial aid in general opportunities as undergraduate degrees do, or even some graduate degrees. But what you would want to do is just do that general scholarship search. Make sure that you're looking to make sure that international students qualify for that scholarship. And in addition, I would absolutely reach out to those law schools that you're interested in individually to see what institutional scholarships they may be able to offer to you as well. And good luck with that search. Here's a great question. Can financial aid also help with room and board fees? Absolutely. In general, financial aid will try to help with everything under what we call cost of attendance. So that includes tuition, fees, room and board, books, transportation expenses, and a trip to the moon. Okay, not really the trip to the moon, but pretty much anything and everything that we think it could cost you to go to school for the year, that would be covered under that cost of attendance. So you can actually be awarded up to the cost of attendance. And I've actually known some people in my own personal life who were able to get scholarships to cover their entire cost of attendance. Now, those cases were rare, and in most cases you see people getting a significant amount of their cost of attendance covered, but room and board does fall in that, so you would have that opportunity. Okay, and this question says, can we contact the financial aid office of our college through their admission email, or do we have to call if we can't go in person? Absolutely, you should be able to email them. Depends on the school whether or not the admission office will answer those questions or the financial aid office will. But if you go to the financial aid office's webpage for each school, there should be a contact us feature, and you can definitely usually find their email address there. And you can also usually find their 800 or toll-free phone number if you want to give them a call. Depending on the questions that you have, it may make more sense to pick up the phone in person and get your questions quickly answered. For some of us, I know I travel a lot, sometimes it's hard to actually find the time to get on the phone, and email is a lot more accessible. So if that works for you, totally fine. And thanks for that good question as well. This question here asks about any good places to look for international or study abroad scholarships. I'm having a really hard time finding any. Yeah, this is true. It's harder to find those. And the best thing that I can say is, contact your school, your college or university that you're attending. Sometimes the school that you're going to will actually set aside some scholarship money for folks who do study abroad. Sometimes they'll just be able to use your own particular things. You'll also want to use those scholarship searches, again, whether it's SALT scholarship search or you're going out online, but really focus in and make sure that you're narrow when you're looking at that search, because that is kind of a specialized area. If there are some specific scholarships out there for you, and I know this sounds weird, but put those quotation marks in there for like international or study abroad. Sometimes that will help you narrow the search to actually get to those particular scholarships. Again, attach that .pdf as a trick as well and see if you get some hits going there. So this question says, regardless of scholarships, what website would you recommend to find scholarships or places to find them on the internet? Certainly I work for SALT, so I'm going to say one more time. Go to saltmoney.org and you'll find some great resources there. But other great places to go actually include the financial aid office websites at the colleges and universities that you're attending. Many of them will have scholarship lists for scholarships that they're aware of in their local area, or that they've had students who've had success with at their institutions. They will also have their preferred scholarship search engines, which may have been created by the schools themselves. Some states actually have created really awesome scholarship searches, particularly for their state residents. So if you are, in a state, most of you should be in a state, I would check with your state to see if they have that collaboration. Some states have gone so far as to create a single application for all of the scholarship offering agencies in that particular state, so you can quickly and easily get a bunch of information there. So those would be a couple places that I would start. And I think I have time for just one more question, and then we're going to have to hop into the chat panel. Again, if you have questions that I didn't answer, please feel free to hop over there. And thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it. So here is a question that says, I previously mentioned a checklist for when you're a senior in high school. What should be on it besides scholarships? That's a great question, and I would encourage you to think about the things that mean the most to you. So that might be location. It might be the size of school. It might be the type of program that they offer. If you are into marine biology, I can tell you that not every school in the universe offers marine biology. So that's going to narrow your search down a little bit. You want to make sure that they offer that. For some people, outdoor rec opportunities are really important just because their lifestyle. I really personally like to run, so I want to be in a place where I feel like I have great opportunities to get outdoors and do that. So that was important to me. Finances obviously are important, and not just scholarships, but really focusing on what that bottom line cost is. Because some scholarships, if they're an independent scholarship organization, you could take that to any school. If it's a scholarship that's particular to an institution, then obviously you would only be able to use it there. But that would be a great place to start. Also thinking just about transportation needs. If you go to a school, are you going to need a car, or can you actually get away with a bus? Or if you're just going to live on campus, you might not need really any transportation. If you have any other sorts of specific needs, if you go far away, are you going to try to come home for Thanksgiving and the winter break and spring break? And if so, that's going to be additional costs that you should consider, versus if you stay home, you wouldn't have that same cost. So I would write down all of those things to kind of, hash out where it kind of felt good to me, and that should help you start narrowing your search down a little bit. Okay, well, I think that our time is up for today. Once again, I want to thank everybody for being out here with me with College Week Live. I'm going to hop over into the chat panel, so I will see all of you over there. And I wish you all the best in your college search. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you in another place and time. Don't forget to come and visit us out at saltmoney.org. Thanks, everybody.